Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us here. I'm going to start off by saying thank you to the voters of Columbus. Last November, they approved a $1.9 billion bond package that includes this historic $500 million investment in affordable housing, the largest in our city's history. Excited about that. The cost of housing isn't an abstract policy discussion. It's something people feel every time they pay their rent or their mortgage. Affordability determines whether people can stay in the neighborhoods they love, whether seniors can age in place, or a young family can put down roots. Rents and housing prices are rising because Columbus is growing. We're attracting jobs, welcoming new residents, and expanding opportunity across our city and our region. But this is also driving a supply and demand problem. Housing production has not kept pace with our population growth, especially the kinds of homes that working families, seniors, and young people can actually afford. When growth outpaces supply, affordability tightens, and too many families are pushed further from the neighborhoods where they want to live. We're grateful for our growth, but we also know it must be managed intentionally if it's to benefit everyone, which is why I'm so grateful that Columbus voters approved affordable housing bonds in 2019 and 2022, totaling $250 million. From those investments, we have allocated or committed more than $200 million already. By leveraging those dollars with additional public and private funding, we've generated $1.5 billion in the rental housing space alone. Those investments have helped create or preserve more than 7,000 affordable homes across our city. That includes affordable rental housing, permanent affordable home ownership, and housing for residents with complex needs who require additional services and support, as well as $7 million invested in emergency and critical home repairs for low-income homeowners so they can afford to remain in their homes. November's vote builds on that foundation. And thanks to the $500 million affordable housing bond package, Columbus is making one of the largest municipal bond investments in affordable housing in the country. To our knowledge, only New York City and San Francisco have invested more. Thanks to the sheer size of this investment, along with the foresight to tackle affordability now, and the regional collaboration enabled by the Regional Housing Coalition, I'm convinced that we can and will build the housing infrastructure we need to ensure that everyone who works hard and plays by the rules in our community can choose the neighborhood of their choice to live in for now and into the future as we continue to grow. As we plan for how we deploy this $500 million, we were intentional in our approach. We looked at where previous funding delivered results and where gaps still remain. We examined housing data and market conditions, and we spent time listening. Over the course of the last 6 months, the Department of Development reached out to 183 housing stakeholders representing 137 organizations, held 17 stakeholder interviews, and met with representatives spanning 12 city divisions and departments. I'm grateful to Carly and Ian for being among the industry experts to weigh in. That engagement, that intentional listening, paired with data and analysis, helped ensure this plan reflects the real needs and real experience of what we're facing during the supply crisis right now in our region. We heard two consistent themes. There's more demand for affordable housing than there is supply, and that housing stability is just as critical as housing production. When families talk about affordability, they're really talking about predictability and the ability to plan so that one setback won't upend their lives. All that input shaped a disciplined four-part plan. I'm going to introduce each of these four strategies and then ask one of our partners here today to help me elaborate on why each strategy is so important, particularly from their perspective. First, we'll keep our foot on the gas when it comes to investing in new and income-qualified affordable homes. Of the new $500 million, we'll dedicate roughly $150 million to building and preserving housing that's affordable to low and middle income families. We'll help close financing gaps in affordable rental projects, expand permanent affordable home ownership, and preserve existing affordability by reinvesting in properties and extending affordability periods. With money from 2019 and 2022, we've supported roughly 6,000 affordable rental units with an average household size of 2.28. This means 13,680 people, medical technicians, childcare providers, janitors and their families are in a stable and affordable home paying no more than 30% of their income to be there. We'll also continue to use our housing bond dollars to make home ownership accessible to families of modest means. So in the coming months, new homeowners will sign their closing papers right here in this building, thanks to our investments in affordable home ownership through the Land Trust. This is largely how we've used the past affordable housing bonds, and Carly Booz of the Affordable Housing Alliance of Central Ohio has had a front row seat and a hand helping to guide this work to see that our dollars were invested this way. I'd like to invite her to the podium to talk a little bit about the impact we've had so far and our potential to keep going with these investments. Carly?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for inviting me to join you today. I am very proud to represent the Alliance as we celebrate the progress of the past and raise the bar for the future. We are an organization that is guided by data, but we are led by our people. At every juncture and every crossroads, AHACO takes the path that best serves the residents of Central Ohio. These affordable housing bonds are a remarkable demonstration of a tool that was given to us by the people through overwhelming votes of support and has been repaid to them through this trust. Together, as you mentioned, we have created thousands of new homes, helping weather the economic storm outside and keeping attainable housing and affordable housing and safe housing within reach for so many of our neighbors. The numbers alone do not do justice to the full picture of how radical a decent home can feel for a family who has been forced to go without. I think, for instance, of Ms. Ford, the first resident to ever make a home at the bond-funded Touchstone Place, who after years of battling both cancer and rising rents, called her 578 square foot apartment a mansion, her sanctuary and her retreat. And I think of the personal connections that we all have to these homes, myself included, that we may not even be fully aware of. In 2004, I was a very precocious punk rocker with purple hair and a lip ring. And one night, my best friend and I, we were on the couch in our apartment. We were figuring out what to do. Should we go to a concert? Should we stay home? We ended up picking the couch over the crowds. But I remember that night very clearly because it was December 8th, 2004. And later that evening, where we would have been standing, a gunman stormed the stage and killed 4 people at the Alrosa Villa. These bonds have transformed that land, not only allowing 180 of our neighbors to find a safe home on that site, but also helping entire community build new and positive memories of that sobering space. So I do not hesitate in offering my thanks and my gratitude to the mayor and to council and to all of the people who spoke with their votes to make housing a top priority for our community, recognizing it as the predicate that it is to strong communities and growing economies. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that that isn't what makes Columbus special. There are lots of cities that have bonds, though I would argue none have used them as effectively and as efficiently as the city of Columbus has. What makes us powerful, though, is that we are not putting all of our eggs in this singular basket. Instead, we have a robust strategy to return affordability and bring equality into housing. Yes, it is bonds, but it is also zone in. It is also this week's Yes in God's Backyard legislation. It is also fair housing and pay to stay and source of income ordinances. It is also the Resilient Housing Initiative, which is preventing eviction, and the shallow subsidy program that is keeping seniors in their homes. And it is the Funding Review Advisory Committee, who are talking about what it means to truly support our shelters and our services, even in the absence of federal support. This comprehensiveness, this thoroughness, and this toughness is what sets Columbus apart, and it's why our peer cities are looking to us for guidance. I want to thank you again for the work that you are leading and allowing us to walk into this moment strong, and for allowing me to join you today. I'm beyond excited for what comes next. Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. Thank you, Carly, for your leadership and partnership in this arena. Next of our 4 strategies, we will invest $125 million in housing stability. 20 or 30 years ago, if you were experiencing homelessness and turned to our shelter system for support, you would find a new home and exit shelter in roughly 2 or 3 weeks' time. Today, our average shelter stay is 120 days. 120 days of uncertainty, trauma, 120 days of learning disruption for our children, 120 days that our public and philanthropic sectors spend caring for the complex needs of these individuals and families. Now, our operating budget has always included funding for a shelter system, and it always will. Rental assistance, wraparound services, and emergency shelter will be needed until the day we solve homelessness entirely. But we need a disruptive, systemic fix if we want things to truly change. That's where our bond dollars, used for capital instead of operating expenses, come in. I intend to invest $125 million over 5 years to further build out a comprehensive shelter system. We'll build non-congregate housing for families and service-enriched supportive housing for high-risk individuals and families. We'll improve housing conditions for low-income homeowners and reinvest in naturally occurring affordable housing to reduce displacement. And we'll expand access to permanent supportive housing to better serve our most vulnerable neighbors. We'll both prevent displacement and loss of housing to keep people out of the shelter system in the first place, and improve supportive housing options for those who do fall into the system. Councilmember Tiara Ross has stood by families experiencing displacement and housing loss. We are thrilled to have her chairing the Housing Committee for City Council, a fierce advocate for families, for children, for housing. Please welcome Councilmember Ross.
Good afternoon. Certainly thank the mayor and our partners in the administration for having me here today. I am honored to stand today in the rollout of this housing bond investment framework, because this moment represents more than just a financial commitment, but it truly represents a value statement about who we are as a city and what we believe our residents deserve. That in this city, housing is both a priority and a right, the accessibility of which should be afforded to every resident in this community. Housing stability is urgent work. The privilege of time that those of us who stand here today may have is a luxury that those who we intend to serve do not. We have to work to build a system that serves every family. Every day, families in our city are making impossible choices: rent or groceries, utilities or medication. Investment in housing stability is a direct investment in the safety of our neighbors. We are not keeping our communities safe if we are not investing comprehensively in a housing plan that ensures every one of our neighbors are housed. This $125 million projected investment in housing stability is a recognition that housing stability means more than just shelter. It means a home that is affordable, safe, healthy, and truly habitable. And it means a response system strong enough to catch people before they fall into homelessness and swift enough to help them recover when they do. This $125 million investment strengthens our homelessness response and diversion efforts. It expands rental assistance and wraparound services to prevent displacement. It ensures that when crisis hits, our shelters are equipped to move families out of instability and back into permanent housing quickly and with dignity. And it allows us to invest in a naturally occurring affordable housing product to keep people housed in the first place. Throughout my career as a housing attorney, I've been on the front lines of housing instability, fighting to hold problem landlords accountable when their negligence left families living in unsafe, unhealthy, and uninhabitable conditions. I've sat across from parents forced to choose between paying rent and paying to fix what a slumlord refused to repair. I've met with individuals in homeless camps. I've met on the steps of my own church, talking to a childhood friend about why he would rather live on the land because living under the elements felt safer than living in the shelter system. I've heard from survivors of domestic violence who stayed in dangerous situations because they simply could not afford to relocate. I've assisted families pushed to the brink of homelessness after a sudden financial crisis. That is why investing capital in our shelter, housing, preservation, and homeless diversion system is not optional. It could truly, and our success in this matter could literally mean life or death for our residents. And we have to be honest, as our mayor said, capital improvements are not going to fix it all. Operating dollars are always going to be needed, particularly when we talk about housing stability. Buildings alone do not provide housing stability for our residents. Services do. People do. Consistent, reliable support does. We must continue to align with our state and federal partners to fund the full continuum of a healthy housing environment, which includes prevention, shelter, supportive services, and permanent housing. And we must also center the voices of those most impacted. It is a disservice to our residents to create plans that affect the community without the community. The people with lived experience, the housing providers committed to doing this work every single day. If we are serious about closing the gaps, then those closest to the crisis must shape the solutions. That is why I am excited to continue this conversation with the administration and with my council colleagues as we review the hundreds of neighbors who have provided their feedback on how this investment can be used to move the needle for our neighbors. This investment is about strengthening our safety net while we work to rebalance our housing market. It's about saying that in Columbus, we will not accept housing stability as inevitable. Together, we can build a system that prevents crisis, responds with dignity, and ensures that every neighbor, every single one, enjoys the right of housing that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Now you know why we're so excited to have her passion, her advocacy, her commitment to housing leading the way on council. Third, in our investment strategy, we'll devote $175 million to expand access to opportunity. What I mean by that is we will use our dollars to create more affordable housing in neighborhoods blessed with high opportunity. Neighborhoods of choice with easy access to jobs, education, childcare, and healthcare. We'll support strategic land acquisition aligned with major civic investments, including Link Us, and investments that increase density or expand housing options to create economic diversity in more neighborhoods. We will use our resources to build affordable housing in our most in-demand neighborhoods to foster economic diversity, prevent displacement, and give our low-income neighbors the same access to amenities and transportation that many of us already enjoy. This investment strategy will help to ensure equitable access to jobs, education, services, and amenities, even as we continue to grow. This will be one of the largest strategic land acquisition efforts in the city's history, and we are grateful for everyone's support. In Latitude for Affordable Housing Trust of Central Ohio and Franklin County has provided loans that enabled the construction of affordable rental, supportive, and home ownership projects from downtown to Hilliard, the South Side to Canal, Winchester. Ian, I'd like to ask you to share a little bit why this part of our strategy is so important.
Mayor Ginther, thank you for your leadership in bringing us to this moment. This bond reflects a commitment to the idea that housing belongs at the center of our city's future, not at the margins of it. And I also want to thank the voters of Columbus who said clearly last November that affordable housing is essential infrastructure and that opportunity should not be determined by a zip code. It's especially meaningful to share this message here in the Edna Building, a place that represents both the history of this neighborhood and the future that we are building together with these types of investments. I'm honored to lead the Affordable Housing Trust for Columbus and Franklin County. For more than 20 years, our organization has helped finance affordable housing across this city. And at AHT, we have a fundamental belief. Housing is not just shelter. It's a platform from which families reach everything else. It is the hub for economic mobility. This belief is at the center of the city's Invest in Access to Opportunity strategy. For decades, the ecosystem has talked about housing mostly in terms of unit counts. How many can we build and how fast? Those numbers matter, and so does speed. But this investment recognizes something equally important. Where affordable housing is located determines whether families can reach jobs, education, childcare, healthcare, and transportation. From a lender's perspective, I can tell you that the math to achieve housing affordability is very unforgiving. In high-demand neighborhoods, land costs are higher, construction is more expensive, and the rents and home prices families can afford simply don't cover the cost to construct. The gap between what it costs and what families can pay has to be filled by something, or the housing does not get built. In underinvested and under-resourced neighborhoods, the challenge is different but equally real. Appraised values often don't support the cost of construction or rehabilitation, making it difficult to secure traditional financing. In both cases, without intentional public investment like this one, the market alone cannot produce and will not produce the housing that our neighbors need, but more importantly, deserve. That reality emphasizes the need for this type of intentional investment. For example, strategic acquisition along Link Us transit corridors before land costs there rise further, so affordable housing can be part of our city's growth and not displaced by it. Investments to increase density and expand housing options through initiatives like Zone In, and investments that connect housing with community services like childcare, workforce development, and health services. Because a home alone is just not enough. Families need and deserve the infrastructure that allows them not just to live, but to thrive and to move forward. That is economic mobility. This is not an either-or approach. It is both and. Creating housing affordability in today's high-demand neighborhoods while protecting it in tomorrow's, those transit corridors and under-resourced neighborhoods where new investments are coming. So families don't have to leave to move forward. This is how we ensure Columbus's growth is shared by all of the people that make this city work. Standing here in Bronzeville, I'm reminded of Langston Hughes' poem, Harlem, A Dream Deferred. In the poem, he asks, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Maybe it sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? What happens to opportunity deferred? I believe that when opportunity is deferred, generation after generation, neighborhood after neighborhood, it doesn't disappear, it accumulates, and it shapes what people believe is possible. This investment is how we stop deferring. It's how we turn opportunity from an abstraction into an address, a recognition, a tangible recognition that when we invest in each other's neighborhoods, we invest in our shared future. The Affordable Housing Trust is proud to be part of this coalition with the city and this group behind me, and we're here to help put these dollars to work thoughtfully, strategically, and in partnership with community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann, for the work that you do. Last of our 4 funding strategies, we will allocate $50 million in housing innovation. You think about your life, what are you doing the same way you were doing 30, 40 years ago? Fortunately, we're still building housing and developing housing very similarly. We need some innovation and some disruption. And we've got some great innovators and disruptors already in this community with Connect Realty Blocks, Brad DeHaze, and other developers and folks in the construction space that are doing things that can cut sometimes the cost in half and the length of time in half to get people in high quality housing. We need to do more of that. And we believe that the private sector, particularly the Columbus Partnership, can help us do more and get more folks in housing faster. Even as we build more housing, rising construction and land costs continue to pose a threat to affordability unless we change how housing gets built and financed. This means investing in leading-edge construction and financial models, work that can reduce development costs and timelines, further extend the impact of our bond dollars, and strengthen partnerships that expand access to affordable rental and home ownership opportunities. We, under the leadership of the partnership, have been a national leader in economic development and job creation. We now need that same energy, that same focus, the same public-private partnership that has helped us to lead the country in the space of housing. That's the only way our economic future, our current trajectory with jobs, with growth, with workforce, stays on the path we're on. We need to make sure that the growth we're going to see is dynamic and inclusive and sustainable. So Jason Hall has taken the lead at the partnership and will be heading up our efforts around the Regional Housing Coalition. It's going to make a huge difference in the years ahead. Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. All right, thank you, Mayor. You know, as the Mayor talked about growth, we should be proud we live in a city and a region that's committed to its future. You're hearing that up here today. We should be proud that we're among the most dynamic economies in the country that is generating new career opportunities that are bringing young people and others back into our community and where they see it as their future. We should be equally proud, as you heard here today, that we're doing the hard work We're doing the hard work to knock down real barriers in the way that people actually experience them so that those career opportunities are more in reach of every kid in this city and region, no matter what zip code they were born in. And if the census is a ballot box on where people want to live, we're showing up strong. All of that is coming together. Our population growing 38% faster than the country as a whole. That's what winning looks like. And that's what led the Wall Street Journal, just in mid-December, to call out Columbus as the closest thing to a Sun Belt boomtown as you will find in the entire Midwest of the U.S. But the article also pointed out another truth that we grapple with here today. You can't overperform on the economy and underperform on housing without putting yourself on a disaster course of affordability for the future. That is the seriousness with which we all come today because it's critical to our future economic competitiveness. Make no mistake, housing is an economic development issue now, and that is precisely where the business community stands today. And we are rolling up our sleeves to work with our partners to bring that innovation mindset to create a stronger and more prosperous future. Mayor Ginther has laid out a bold and fresh approach to the complex housing issue that our country is grappling with that can only be solved by working across jurisdictional lines together. We will build the regional will in the innovative regional solutions, but embracing those bedrock hand-stacking principles that we did almost 20 years ago when we pioneered what is now widely recognized as the national model for regional economic development. That's what's given us this opportunity. And I will remind you, I've talked to folks that were working on this almost 20 years ago. We entered this year by the leading publication that covers this industry. For the first time ever, the Columbus region is #1 in the country for economic development and infrastructure. That was unthinkable when this started, but that is where we stand, and that is the boldness, the innovation, and the mindset that we're bringing to the challenge before us. That is why we firmly in the business community support Mayor Ginther's approach to building a sustainable, impactful regional housing coalition. We know from the assessments already we're going to need to add roughly 200,000 units of housing in the region. And our pipeline's looking good out there, so we may need to ramp those numbers up as we continue to have success. But Mayor Ginther stepped up with leadership and said, in the city, we'll deliver half of that as we rally the region to work together towards this bold goal. And we've seen it from the zoning reform, the leadership on this historic, truly historic bond issue for our city, to embracing innovation. The work is underway. We're going to innovate in how we finance, innovate in the kinds of partnerships and civic muscle we've got to build together to win on this issue, and innovate in the technology that is going to lower the cost and allow us to deliver more with less. That's what we're talking about today. This is a national issue, as I mentioned, of course. But in Columbus, we do not stare at challenges. We solve them. That's what we did almost 20 years ago with economic development and became the national model. And as someone who moved here a year ago, I will tell you that is real. That is real, that people look to this region as the leader. And I would also remind us, and sometimes in these moments when we hear this, it's not political rhetoric. Our mayor was one of those people almost 20 years ago when those were tough decisions to say we were going to approach economic development as a region. And I think we shouldn't just say leadership in the abstract. We recognize people that made tough choices that look really good when they're successful, but those were big swings, big visions, and big risks when those decisions were made with people like Mayor Ginther that walked the walk. And that's exactly the journey we're on today. The private sector is committed to partnership, and by leading at the regional level and elevating this issue at the state level, we're already helping shape and advocate bipartisan legislative policy solutions, including what we all got done this year under the leadership of State Senator Michelle Reynolds. Our business leaders bring critical expertise and innovation that, in partnership with the public sector, is going to be able to do special things. We thank Mayor Ginther members of council for their leadership on this issue, and to be able to leverage that partnership for public good. So thank you for that, and with that, I proudly turn it back to Mayor Ginther.
So you heard it here first. We want to stay number one in economic development and become number one in housing. And this is how we do this. Because quite honestly, we can't stay number one in economic development if we don't dramatically increase and make sure that everybody that works in this community can afford to live here too. And we know housing, transit, and safety will continue to guide our work, but I'm grateful for the private sector's engagement in support of this. So together, these four priorities help us to invest our affordable housing bond dollars. They help to form a comprehensive framework for the future. And we'll keep listening and adapting as the market and our neighbors' needs continue to change. This is how Columbus will continue to grow in a way that works for everyone who calls this city home. This is how Columbus grows, purposefully, intentionally, responsibly, and with affordability and collaboration front and center. I want to thank our voters for placing their trust in us, our partners for helping to shape this work, and our neighbors who shared their experiences and perspectives along the way. Our path ahead is clear. We have a mandate. We have a plan. We have a responsibility to deliver. And as you heard from Councilmember Ross, there is a sense of urgency that we have to move. There is time, but not much time. I would argue this decade will be the most consequential decade in the rest of the century around housing, economic development, and affordability. We are happy to answer any questions. If you have questions regarding today's announcement, we'll take them first because I want to respect everybody's time. And then I'll stick around because you could ask me anything you want to on any other topic.
Mayor,
Yeah.
You're putting this plan out ahead of tomorrow when City Council is holding a hearing to ask for the public's ideas. Are you still open to further public input?
Oh, sure. This is just the start of the conversation. And as I had mentioned, Jordan, the staff have been talking with the public for about 6 months, and hundreds of interviews and conversations have taken place with developers, with partners. As I mentioned, Ian and Carly were part of that, but also folks that were, in the shelter system and residents who were looking for housing. So we've cast a pretty wide net, but this is really the start of the conversation. This framework is just based on best practice, what's worked, what we need to do differently moving forward, and how things have changed since 2019 and 2022 in the space of housing.
The bucket for, I forget what it's called, but it includes shelters and other things. It includes a lot of other things. How much do you see invested capital-wise in the homeless shelters?
Well, I think ultimately what we want to see is more folks in housing, not in shelters. And we want the amount of time folks are saying, if necessary in the shelters to be shortened significantly. You can only imagine how disruptive that is to a family to be in a shelter for 120 days. Think about your family. Think about what that would do. We need to shorten that time frame, and we need to get people in housing faster.
I'll ask another one. The $50 million for innovation, is that money going to go to private businesses for research and development? That doesn't seem like something that would pitch to voters.
No, not necessarily. I think what we want to do is, one of the beauties of P3s and why we were so excited to have the partnership take the lead on this the way they did with 2020 and One Columbus, is that there are a lot of private resources that could be invested in helping us solve this supply crisis that aren't the traditional philanthropic or foundational dollars. And our hope is that major private employers are going to invest in this innovation space to help us really go after, because as you know, we need more market rate, we need more workforce, we need more affordable. I think the public resources from the city, the county, the state, and even the federal government are going to be more focused on affordable housing development, getting more affordable housing units in the pipeline, whether it's strategic land acquisition or other types of things, but really see the private sector helping to lead the way in innovation, disruption, and ultimately helping us deal with the market rate units that we need in the pipeline.
Okay, I'm still trying to understand how the 50 million is a capital investment and what that will look like.
You know, and obviously, we're going to be working closely with the Regional Housing Coalition to determine that. Obviously, this is, like I said, the start of the process. There's a council hearing that will take place, I think, tonight or tomorrow night or whatever. But, you know, this is a framework. This is not a specific plan with strategies and tactics as of yet. But people have continued to ask since November, where is this money going to be spent? How is it going to be spent? How are you going to be going about making some of these decisions? And we felt like we owed the public, based on all the outreach that's taken place, a framework based on best practices and feedback.
You have in here the $175 million in investment towards access to opportunity. I'm just curious, how much capital investment are you looking at putting towards things like making neighborhoods more walkable, you know, things like childcare facilities nearby, grocery stores, pharmacies, because obviously affordable housing, yes, you want more buildings, but if they don't have access to those other resources.
Yeah, our thought would be that these resources would be really focused on housing, getting more housing units, you know, whether they're apartments or single family homes, home ownership or renters. The goal and the guiding light that I heard from voters over and over again last year was, we need to do everything in our power to make housing more affordable. If you work hard and play by the rules, you should be able to live and work in this community, in the neighborhood of your choice. So, but there will be strategic land acquisition. Like I said, this is the biggest strategic land acquisition effort we've ever undertaken as a city, and we'll be looking to the Link Us corridors, because we think that with transit supportive infrastructure, transit-oriented development, think about it for a second. What do you spend most on out of your family budget? Probably housing and transportation. So if we can get more affordable housing units closer to these bus rapid transit lines, you can see how we can give so many of our families a little bit more breathing room with respect to affordability.
With strategic land acquisition, is the city going to be building units on those or holding the land to give it over?
I think
developers?
everything's on the table. I need 200,000 units in this region in the next 10 years. Now, the good thing is, Aaron, we're up over 30% in the region as far as permits issued, and we've approved in the city of Columbus over 10,000 last year.
On track for 2025, and that's an anomaly in the nation for us to be up that high.
But we got to keep doing it for 10 years. And we'll take the lead. We'll do half. I've told all of our suburban, ex-urban neighbors, we'll do half. I need everybody else to step up and do their part and meet us where they are.
It has time for one more question.
Mr. Mayor, the campaign for these bond dollars, it got a lot of money from the New Albany Company, which was founded by Les Wexner. And since 2016, your campaign has gotten over $90,000 from Les Wexner. Given what's been happening with the Epstein files, what has been revealed about Les Wexner, are you concerned about that money at all, or are you willing to give any of it back?
You know, nobody's really asked me that question. I'll have to think about it. Obviously, you know, the support for something like the affordable housing bond package, there was very diverse groups of folks that supported this, folks from labor, affordable housing advocates, the business community. We're proud of the diversity of support that we had for the bond package, but I'll have to think about it. Nobody's asked me that.
Are you concerned about Wexner's actions, alleged actions at all?
Well, certainly, you know, what folks have accused different people involving Jeffrey Epstein are pretty awful and disgusting and unacceptable in criminal actions. So, but I'm not aware of anything that would implicate, you know, Mr. Wexner in any of that criminal activity.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.